The Forgotten Room. In a remote town in the English countryside, nestled between shadowy woods and abandoned fields, stands an old mansion. Its past is dark, with countless tales of the former residents vanishing under strange circumstances. This is the story of Lucas, a young historian who, in his quest to uncover the mansion's secrets, stumbles upon a long-hidden mystery that brings him face to face with his worst fears. The mansion beckons. Lucas had always been drawn to forgotten histories. When he heard about the mansion on the edge of town, known as Blackwood Manor, he couldn't resist. Everyone in the town had heard tales about the place. Whispers of apparitions, strange lights, and a haunting melody that played at night. Locals spoke of a hidden room in the mansion, a space that seemed to appear and disappear, rumored to be cursed. Intrigued by the mystery, Lucas arranged to spend a night there, hoping to document the truth behind the stories. The caretaker warned him, "Once you enter the Forgotten Room, it remembers you, and it doesn't like to let go." A house of eerie echoes. The mansion was just as the stories described, vast and empty, with floors creaking under each step. Dust covered every surface, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling like eerie chandeliers. As Lucas explored, he noticed odd things. A mirror where his reflection didn't seem to match, paintings with eyes that seemed to follow him, and the faint smell of burning wood, though there hadn't been a fire there for years. But what unnerved him most was the faint melody he could occasionally hear, a haunting tune that seemed to drift through the walls. As he followed the sound, he noticed a small door he hadn't seen before. It wasn't on the map of the mansion he'd studied. It was almost as if it had appeared just for him. With a hesitant breath, Lucas opened the door and stepped inside. The room was freezing cold, with walls that appeared to be both decayed and freshly painted, shifting as if the past and present were colliding. There was a single chair in the center, facing a broken window. On the walls, there were faded portraits of people he didn't recognize, yet they all seemed to share one thing: fear etched in their eyes. He noticed an old journal lying on a desk, its cover worn and pages yellowed. Flipping through, he realized it belonged to a woman named Eleanor, who had once lived in the mansion. Her last entry read, "The room has remembered me. Tonight I will vanish, just like the others." Eleanor's story comes alive. As Lucas continued reading, he felt a presence in the room. The door slammed shut, and the temperature plummeted further. Suddenly he saw her, a faint figure standing by the window, staring at him with a sorrowful expression. She looked like she was pleading, her mouth moving without sound. Then, as if in a flashback, the room changed. He was transported back to a time when Eleanor was alive, watching her live out her final moments. She was hiding in the room, desperate, clutching her journal and whispering, "They're coming." The walls seemed to pulse, and the portrait's eyes glowed ominously. And then, she vanished, without a trace, leaving only the journal behind, trapped in the room. Back in the present, Lucas was terrified. He tried to leave, but the door wouldn't budge. The walls seemed to close in, and the melody grew louder, more haunting. He realized the room was alive, feeding off his fear, refusing to let him go. The same faces in the portraits started shifting, each morphing into someone who had vanished before, and now he was becoming one of them. In a desperate attempt, he opened the journal again. The last words appeared as if freshly written. "If you're reading this, you're already part of the room's curse." Lucas saw a figure in the corner, a shadow, watching him intently. It was the embodiment of the room's curse, a dark entity that trapped souls to maintain its power. Just as the entity reached out to him, Lucas shouted Eleanor's name, hoping to reach her spirit. The air shimmered, and for a brief moment, Eleanor reappeared, looking both alive and ghostly. With her help, Lucas learned the room's weakness. It thrived on fear, but he had to let go of it completely to escape. With a deep breath, he calmed himself, forcing his mind to resist the panic. As he did, the room began to dissolve, weakening the entity's hold on him. Escape, or so it seems. Finally, the door opened, and Lucas stumbled out, the cursed melody fading behind him. But as he left the mansion, he couldn't shake the feeling that the room hadn't let him go entirely. Later in his reflection, he noticed his own eyes looked different, filled with the same fear he had seen in the portraits. As Lucas left the town, he realized he hadn't escaped the room after all. The room was with him now in his mind, waiting for the right moment to pull him back. The last words of Eleanor echoed in his ears. "Once it remembers you, it never forgets." After Lucas disappeared, the town's eerie tales only grew stronger. His disappearance, coupled with the mansion's sinister reputation, drew more curious souls to Blackwood Manor. Each one wanted to solve the mystery, but none dared to venture in at night. That is, until Emma, an investigative journalist with a reputation for uncovering the darkest secrets, arrived. Emma's arrival. Emma's fascination with the paranormal brought her to Blackwood. She was no stranger to the supernatural, having investigated cases of haunted forests and cursed objects. Yet, there was something uniquely unsettling about Blackwood Manor. It wasn't just the history, it was the whispers around town, the way locals avoided mentioning Lucas's name, and the fear that flickered in their eyes when she brought up the mansion. Determined, she booked a room in the local inn and made it her mission to uncover the truth. She spent days researching, poring over archives and newspaper clippings about the mansion's owners, deaths, and unexplained vanishings, which all seemed to center around one thing, the forgotten room. And Lucas's last notes, found at the mansion's doorstep, warned her. It remembers. Clues and strange occurrences. One night, as she sorted through her findings, she stumbled upon something chilling. A photo from decades ago, showing the mansion in its prime. In the background, nearly hidden in shadow, was a figure by a window, someone who looked exactly like Lucas. Shaken, Emma wondered if he was still in the mansion, perhaps trapped between this world and the next. She decided that she would enter the mansion at night to find the forgotten room and confront whatever curse lurked within. Before leaving, she pinned a note on the inn's board. "If I'm not back by morning, burn the room. It's the only way to stop it." Entering the forgotten room, Emma arrived at the mansion just as the sun dipped below the horizon. Every step she took toward the house was heavy, like she was walking through an invisible fog. Inside, the darkness felt alive, pressing in from all sides. She called out for Lucas, her voice swallowed by the oppressive silence. As she explored, she felt a strange tug, almost as if something was guiding her. The house's hallways seemed to shift, becoming endless and looping back on themselves. Finally, she found herself in front of an unmarked door. She felt a chill run down her spine. She knew this had to be the forgotten room. Inside, the temperature dropped, and shadows pooled in every corner. She saw the same chair Lucas described, the same portraits with those fearful eyes. The room seemed to breathe, a faint melody beginning to play, each note tightening around her like a noose. Encounter with Lucas. Suddenly she felt someone watching her. Turning, she saw him, Lucas, or at least what was left of him. His face was pale, his eyes hollow, as if drained by the room. He whispered, "You shouldn't have come. It won't let you leave." Emma stepped closer, desperate. "There must be a way. Tell me, Lucas. What can I do?" Lucas looked down, trembling. "Once it's in your mind, it never lets go. You can leave the room, but it will follow. It doesn't want to be forgotten." As he spoke, he began to fade, his form flickering like a dying candle flame. Emma reached out, but her hand passed through him, touching nothing but icy air. The room seemed to laugh, feeding off her despair. Confronting the entity desperate, Emma flipped open her notebook, reading aloud the ritual she had found in an old book of dark spells. She hoped it could weaken the entity that held Lucas and all the others captive. The room shook, the walls distorting as if resisting her words. Shadows began to pool in the center of the room, coalescing into a dark humanoid shape with hollow eyes that held countless lifetimes of suffering. The entity's voice echoed in her mind, filled with anger and sorrow. "I am all they fear. I am all they have lost." It reached out, and she felt her energy draining, the warmth of her life slipping away. Emma gritted her teeth, refusing to let it overpower her. She shouted, "You can't hold us all. Let them go or be forgotten forever." With the last of her strength, she threw her notebook into the center of the room, shouting the final words of the ritual. The escape and a bitter victory. The shadows screamed, shuddering, as the room began to collapse on itself. The walls cracked, and the dark figure was drawn into the floor, sinking back into the cursed wood as the air grew lighter. Emma saw Lucas one last time. His face softened, and he mouthed, "Thank you." The door swung open, and Emma staggered out, collapsing in the hallway. She glanced back to see the room, now empty, silent, and filled only with dust. She could feel the curse lifting, the dark energy fading. As Emma walked back to town, she felt a strange sensation, a subtle, lingering presence. She looked down and saw on her wrist a faint handprint, black as shadow. Lucas's final warning echoed in her mind. It never lets go. Days later, she left Blackwood, but she noticed odd things wherever she went. Flickers of shadows in mirrors, faint whispers in the dark, and that haunting melody that played whenever she was alone. Emma knew then she had not escaped the forgotten room. She carried a part of it with her, a darkness that would haunt her forever, waiting for the perfect moment to claim her too. A new tale begins. The legend of Blackwood Manor spread, but this time it included Emma's story. And one night, when the innkeeper looked at the inn's board, he saw a new note pinned there in Emma's handwriting. "If I'm not back by morning, burn the room."